Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Parthopratim Bora from Department of Sociology, Dibrugarh University, Assam. The title of this module is Functionalism, Neo-functionalism, System Analysis, Merton, from the paper Contemporary Social Theory. Merton is one of the important theories within the broader school of functionalism. He was influenced on the one hand by the work of Talcott Parsons. On the other hand, he was also influenced by the earlier functionalists like that of Durkheim. But his work is substantially different from that of the Talcott Parsons. In fact, his work or the work of the Merton can be better termed as middle range theories, because rather than having abstract understanding of functionalism, Merton tried to have the functional understanding which is more empirically rooted, or that is empirically verifiable. As a result, his theories is not a kind of attempt to have a grand abstract understanding of functionalism, rather they are known as middle range theories. Some of the other important ideas apart from the understanding of functionalism, of course, is associated with his idea of function, the idea of manifest and the latent function, as well as the idea of dysfunction. His idea of reference group as well as his idea of anticipatory socialization were seen as some of the original contribution of the Merton. So, we will be basically discussing this important concept of Merton in the context of broader school of functionalism. So, how we can contextualize his theories and his ideas within the school of functionalism. Further, we will try to see how his work is different from his predecessor, that is Talcott Parsons. So, while talking about the person, Merton was basically born in Philadelphia to a family of Jewish immigrants from the Eastern Europe. Because of a library that was next to the home in the Philadelphia, he could develop the idea on science, literature, history and biography, etc. The emergence of new libraries and the educational institutions, art museum in the 1920s enabled Merton to flourish in his academic endeavor. Sorokin, along with the Merton, co-authored the Social Time and a chapter in the social and cultural dynamics. Besides Sorokin, Talcott Parsons introduced Merton to the work of classical sociologists like Durkheim, Weber, Marx and Zimmel. So, we can see that apart from the influence of Petrim Sorokin, there was also a great influence of the Talcott Parsons along with the influence of Durkheim, Weber, Marx, etc. on the work of Merton. Some of the important work of the Mertons are the Unanticipated Consequence of Purposive Social Action, which was published in 1936, and in 1938 he published another article, Social Structure and Anomy. Some other important works include Civilization and Culture, that was published in 1936, Social Structure and Anomy, that was published in 1938, Recent French Sociology, that was published in 1934, Durkheim's Division of Labor in Society, that was published in 1934, Self-Fulfilling Prophecy, that was published in 1948, a series of lectures on singleton and the multiples in scientific discovery, that was published in 1996, The Matthew Effect in Science, The Reward and Communication System of Science, that was published in 1968, Socially Expected Duration, that was published in 1984, The Fallacy of the Latest World, The Case of Pietism and the Science, 1984, etc. So, we see the large number or the vast work that were done by the Merton that range in the various fields, and these various work were basically associated with his functional understanding of society. On the other hand, all this work were rooted in his own unique way of functional analysis. Let us discuss the idea of objective consequences and subjective disposition with reference to the Merton. He said that in social sciences there always existed an ambiguity between subjective motive and the objective function of action. For Merton, function involves the standpoint of the observer and not necessarily that of the participant. Hence, a social function refers to observable objective consequences, not subjective disposition. He believed that science developed cumulatively and incrementally by standing on the shoulder of the giants. There are mainly three directives of relating to the masters: a selective approach to derive the core ideas of the masters and the remodeling of it to avoid their blind allays and mistakes. Second, a new reading of the masters after critically analyzing their ideas, reworking their ideas by relating to new perspectives and approaches, discoveries and experiences, etc. Injunction of critical enrich. This refers to partly or entirely rejection of past ideas which are found to be incomplete, deficient and obsolete. The above approach goes into the establishment of Mertonian theories. Parsons' influence on Merton's interest towards the theoretical consideration was very immense. Parsonian's abstract theorization was a subject of Merson's persistent challenge, leading him to propose the notion of middle-range theory in 1945. Similarly, Parsonian idea of structural functionalism was a subject of Merton's contribution to the birth of his own dynamic functional analysis in 1949. So we can see, although Talcott-Parsons influenced the work of Merton, but Merton's theory was substantially different from that of Talcott-Parsons. Say for example, in the context of functional theory, we can see how the theory that was done by or given by the Talcott-Parsons was basically abstract in its nature, but theorization of the Merton was known as middle-range theory, which was a kind of criticism that was raised against the abstract theorization of the Talcott-Parsons. Again, when we look into the question of structural functionalism of the Talcott-Parsons, we can basically see how the Merton developed his own dynamic idea of functional analysis as a kind of criticism to the structural functionalism of Talcott-Parsons. So there is a difference between the work of Talcott-Parsons and Merton, although Talcott-Parsons had an influence over the work of Merton. Similarly, Merton's focus on discursive conceptual clarification and elaboration went in parallel to Lazarsfeld's emphasis on turning concept into operationalized, testable variable. They together brought about the study on friendship formation. Now let us discuss the system analysis from the work of Merton. Merton is believed to be the founder of this thesis of functionalism, who identified new aspects of social life which are sociologically significant. He coined the term neologism to designate them. His canon of contemporary sociology contained manifest and latent function, dysfunction, self-fulfilling prophecy, homophily, heterophily, status set, role set, opportunity structures, anticipatory socialization, reference group behavior, sociological ambivalence, etc. The clear-cut understanding of this concept helped better understanding of the social system as a whole. Meaning and goal of sociology. For Merton, sociology can be described as lucidly presenting the claim to logically interconnected and empirically confirmed proposition about the structure of society and its changes, the behavior of man within the structure and the consequences of that behavior. After describing call of sociologists, his next attempt was to focus on the goal of sociology as a stream. For him, in the large, sociology is engaged in finding out how man's behavior and the fate are affected, if not minutely governed, by his place within particular units and changing kind of social structure and culture. Hence, from the above discussion, the prime subject matter of sociology consists of following aspects: genetic, that is how it came to be; functional, that is how it affects behavior; static, that is how it operates; and dynamic, that is how it changes. Hence, for Merton, sociology is a study of social structure. Now let us discuss the criteria of social structure. Merton's analysis of functionalism is based on the structural context, has the following 4 defining criteria. 1. It basically talk about organized set of social relationship. The focus is on the relating and the linking various components of society. The second one is a pattern, that is a regular and repetitive character of social relation. The third one is the latent function, that is the idea of a deep, hidden and the underlying level consequences. It can be either manifest or the latent function. Now the fourth one is the structural context and the structural constraints. Here, the idea of constraining or facilitating influences exerted by social structure on more concrete, more directly accessible social phenomena and events like behavior, belief, attitude, motivation, etc. Mertonian structural analysis is best reflected in his work of Anomy, that talks about the structural condition of dissociation between uniform cultural demand of success and the differentiated opportunities of success that result in innovation, ritualism, retreatism, rebellion, etc., depending upon the wider structural context within which it appears. Now discuss the trait of social structure. Merton's favor of the social structure analysis consists of the following 2 traits. First, the complex and the multidimensional. It basically talks about a plurality of component elements such as status, roles, role set, status set, norms, values, institutions, collectivities, groups, etc. that shaped into various kind of network and interlinkages. The second one is the emphasis on asymmetrical relationship, that is because of social status, organizations, communities, there arises social conflict leading to dysfunction, strain and tensions. Now let us discuss the types of structural changes. For Merton, social structure generate changes both within the structure and changes of the structure through cumulatively patterned choices in the behavior and the amplification of dysfunctional consequences resulting from strain, conflict and the contradiction. Hence, through his theory, Merton incorporated structurally produced changes in and of social structure. The following type of structural changes fall within the purview of Mertonian dynamics. The reproductive changes, that is, the changes that involve regular functioning of everyday society, consisting of the ongoing adaptive processes which in turn reproduce specified states of a social structure. The second one is the transformation of structure, that is, changes that disrupt the existing structure, create a new one in its place. Now let us come to the another important contribution of the R.K. Merton, that is manifest, latent and the dysfunction. Merton functionalism questions basically 3 primary postulates of early functionalism, that is the postulate of the functional unity of the social system. The second is the functional universality of the social system. The third one is the indispensability of the functional item for the social system. So he criticized the earlier functionalism because of the 3 criteria postulated by the earlier functionalism. One is the how the earlier functionalism gave emphasis or gave too much emphasis on the functional unity of the social system. Second is, of course, the question of the functional universality. That was the too much emphasis on the functional universality was criticized by the Merton. And third, of course, the indispensability of the functional item was criticized by Merton in his functional analysis. Merton again developed the two kind of function, the idea of manifest function and the idea of latent function, and he basically draw the inspiration on the development of manifest and latent function from that of Freud. Merton defined manifest function as those objective consequences contributed to the adjustment or adaptation of the system which are intended and recognized by the participant in a system. By contrast, latent functions are those which are neither intended nor recognized. So the basic difference that lies between the manifest and the latent function is that while the manifest function is intended as well as it is recognized by the participant in the system, the latent function is unrecognized, and as a result it is also unintended for the participant. Then whether it is a case of manifest function or whether it is a case of latent function, we see that the earlier functionalists basically talk about the function that a particular institution play for the society. On the other hand, Merton conceptualized the idea of dysfunction. So it is not like that particular manifest or the latent function is always functional for the system. It sometimes may be having the negative consequence in terms of adaptation or in terms of adjustment to the system, and that is conceptualized by the Merton as dysfunction. Another important concept of the Merton was the idea of reference group. So he said that the reference group is basically the group which is used by the individual in order to evaluate his or her achievements. So reference group is basically a kind of reference, the group for the reference in order to evaluate the individual achievement, the role performance or the aspiration and the ambition. He said that it is basically with the help of reference group that the individual judges himself. And on the other hand, Merton also said that for both membership as well as non-membership, the reference group can be important. Human beings look at themselves not solely through the eyes of their group member, but also through the eyes of the member which belong to the other group. So because how we see ourselves, that may sometimes may be through the eyes of the member from our own group, or sometimes from the eyes of the member of the other group. And in that context lies the significance of the reference group given by Merton. Merton and Keith's synthetic studies involving reference group has offered detailed discussion on the research related to the field of reference group theory, introducing a new concept of anticipatory socialization. They argued that anticipatory socialization occurs when individuals close or when the individual choose as a reference group a non-membership group and began to socialize them to what they perceive to be the group's norms. So on the other hand, the anticipatory socialization have significance in such a context when the members basically identify another group as a reference group, and in such a context they started socializing themselves in order to achieve or in order to get the norms of the group that they take as a reference group. And this was the significance of the anticipatory socialization, the term that was conceptualized by Merton. Now let us discuss the middle range theory. So as I already discussed in the initial part of my presentation, Merton's understanding of functionalism is substantially different from the functionalism or the abstract functionalism of Talcott persons because of the middle range theory that was developed by Merton. Functional theories, according to Merton, were value neutral. They are neither good nor bad. Thus, they are objective analysis. There may exist intended manifest function, or there could be unintended latent consequences of action. In the year 1940s, he used the term middle range theory to overcome the problems inherent in the new sociological emphasis on abstraction. There was an increasing desire among the sociologists of the time for a unified sociological theory, but which ultimately became so broad as to render it empirically untestable. Merton argues that middle range theories could be developed to test subsection of these high-level abstract theories. Thus, middle range theory was developed to guide the empirical investigation of the higher social order. Merton developed the middle range theory in order to tackle the problems that were part with the high order theories that were developed in the 1940s. Because, as Merton argued, these high order theories were abstract in its nature, and because of their abstract nature, these grand theories or these high abstract theories cannot be tested empirically. So, as a result, he developed the middle range theories which can be tested at the empirical level, and this, as argued by Merton, is the one of the significant character of the middle range theory, and thereby he tries to see how the different level of the grand theories or the different level of the broad theories or the abstract theories can be tested by the development of the middle range theories. The main features of middle range theories are they are not directly inferred from experience, but rather themselves generate inferences about experience. Second one, this inference guide empirical inquiry. Middle range theory is principally used in the sociology to guide empirical inquiry. Middle range theories are limited in scope. So, this is the limited scope of the middle range theory, as well as how the middle range theory guide the empirical inquiry, and how they basically give the inferences regarding the experience are some of the important characteristics of middle range theories. Now, let us see some of the examples to understand the Merton's functional analysis. Merton tells that sociologists should not be committed to study only the function role of the sociologist, and it need to develop an empirical idea about functional, dysfunctional and non-functional relationship between different social institutions in a given society. Hence, he rejects outrightly the thesis that there is presence of universal functional role of every institution in the society. Rather, the subject matter should be the analysis of function, dysfunction and non-function. So, the important contribution of the Merton lies in the fact that he basically criticized one of the important or the most important postulate of the functional analysis, which talk about the function of the institution, or it talk about institution only in terms of the function that it perform for the system. On the other hand, against that criticism, what the Merton tried to do, he basically tried to see the function, the dysfunction or the non-function that the institution have, and he said that this should be the subject matter of sociology rather than emphasis on the function or only on the function. Merton said that the subject matter of the sociology should emphasis on the function, dysfunction as well as on non-function. Merton indicates that crime should not be treated as dysfunctional phenomena. People generally adhere to culturally prescriptive means to achieve goals, but in many cases they are not in a position to accomplish their goal. Merton was not concerned in developing grand theories, but rather paid importance on empirical fact on the basis of synchronic data. According to Merton, theories ought to explain the fact in systematic manner. Without theory, fact cannot be systematic gathering of ideas. Hence, theory provides a broad framework in the light in which we can understand fact in organized and systematic manner. So his significance lies in the context of theory how we can arrange the fact in a systematic manner. So the significance of the theory as seen by the Merton is the arrangement of fact in a systematic manner. So in this module we see the important concept that were developed by the Merton and how his understanding was substantially different from that of the Talcott person and the earlier work or the earlier functionalists. Although Merton was greatly influenced by the earlier functionalists like Durkheim, etc., but his work is different from the earlier functionalists because rather than having a kind of abstract grand functionalism, Merton tried to have a functionalism which is more rooted in the society. So he tried to have a functionalism which was understood in the idea of middle range theories. They were termed as middle range theory because of their empirically testable nature. He also developed the idea of function, dysfunction, as well as idea of manifest and the latent function. So in that context we can see how the institution, apart from having function for the society, it may be dysfunctional in some other context. So he basically tries to see how the role of the sociologist should not be only associated with the study of mere function, but it should also be associated, or it should also give emphasis on the study of function, dysfunction, as well as non-function. So this is the important theory of this is the important idea of middle range theory with reference to functionalism that was developed by Merton, which basically tries to give a new way or the new conceptualization of functionalism. For details, you can study the original works that are written by Merton. Thank you.